Last night, the military balance in the Middle East was shattered forever. Russia has secretly armed Iran with the S-500 Prometheus, the most advanced air defense system on Earth. This game-changing transfer has left Israel virtually defenseless in the skies, while U.S. aircraft carriers have been forced to flee the region in panic. According to highly placed intelligence sources and leaked satellite imagery, dozens of S-500 launchers, radars, and command systems have already been delivered to Iran and are now operational. The S-500 is not just another air defense missile. It is a revolutionary system capable of detecting and destroying stealth aircraft like the F-35, intercepting hypersonic missiles, and engaging targets at altitudes of up to 200 kilometers. For decades, Israel has relied on its qualitative military edge, especially its fleet of advanced fighter jets, to strike anywhere in the region with impunity. That era ended the moment the first S-500 battery became active on Iranian soil. The implications are catastrophic for Israel. Its F-35S, once considered nearly invisible, can now be tracked and engaged at extreme ranges. Deep strikes into Iran have suddenly become extremely high-risk operations. Israel's Air Force, long the dominant power in the Middle East, now faces the very real possibility of being neutralized before it can even cross the border. Meanwhile, the United States reacted with visible panic. Within hours of confirmation, American aircraft carrier strike groups operating near the Persian Gulf and eastern Mediterranean received urgent orders to reposition farther away from Iranian airspace. What was meant to be a show of strength quickly turned into a strategic retreat. The world watched as U.S. carriers fled the area, a humiliating admission that even America's most powerful naval assets are now vulnerable in the face of Russia's latest technology in Iranian hands. This secret arms transfer represents one of the most significant shifts in the regional power equation since the end of the Cold War. Russia and Iran have formed a de facto military alliance that directly challenges American and Israeli dominance. The S-500 does not merely defend Iranian airspace, it creates a protective umbrella that could shield Iranian nuclear facilities, missile bases, and command centers from Israeli or American airstrikes. Tonight, we will break down exactly how this secret transfer happened, why Western intelligence failed to stop it, what the S-500 truly means for air superiority in the region, why American carriers were forced to flee, and what this dramatic development means for the future of Israel, the United States, and the global order. The old rules of engagement have just been rewritten. Stay with me as we uncover one of the most dangerous military developments of our time. 3 explosive questions will define tonight's urgent analysis. First, how did Russia secretly deliver the S-500 air defense system to Iran without Western intelligence stopping it? Second, why does the S-500 make Israel's Air Force almost defenseless and render F-35 strikes extremely dangerous? Third, why did U.S. aircraft carriers immediately flee the region after the transfer was confirmed? In the next 40 minutes, we will expose the details of this secret arms deal, analyze the terrifying capabilities of the S-500, examine America's panicked retreat, and reveal how this single transfer has fundamentally changed the balance of power in the Middle East forever. Now, let's begin. Let us now reconstruct how this secret and game-changing arms transfer unfolded. According to multiple intelligence sources and leaked satellite imagery, The covert operation began approximately 14 months ago. Russia and Iran established a highly compartmentalized logistics network to move S-500 Prometheus components from Russian territory into Iran without triggering Western detection systems. The transfer was executed in several phases. First, critical radar systems and command vehicles were transported by sea through the Caspian Sea using disguised civilian cargo ships. Later phases involved overland movement through Armenia and Azerbaijan using secure military convoys under Russian protection. The final and most sensitive components, the 40N-6E long-range missiles and advanced launchers, were delivered by heavy transport aircraft under the cover of joint military exercises. By early this year, the first S-500 battery had become operational near Tehran, with additional systems deployed to protect key nuclear facilities and missile production sites in western and central Iran. Western intelligence only confirmed the full extent of the transfer after several batteries were already active and integrated into Iran's air defense network. The scale of the operation was breathtaking. Russia reportedly delivered at least 4 full S-500 regiments, including mobile launchers, multiband radars, and hundreds of advanced missiles. This represents one of the most significant prohibited weapons transfers since the end of the Cold War. What makes this transfer particularly dangerous is the S-500's revolutionary capabilities. Unlike the S-400, the S-500 can simultaneously track and engage up to 10 hypersonic and ballistic targets at ranges exceeding 500 kilometers and altitudes up to 200 kilometers. Its radars operate across multiple frequency bands, making it extremely difficult for stealth aircraft like the F-35 to remain undetected. For Israel, the consequences are immediate and severe. The Israeli Air Force has long relied on its ability to conduct deep strikes into Iranian territory with relative impunity. With S-500 systems now guarding Iranian airspace, that freedom of action has been dramatically curtailed. Israeli F-35s now face a credible threat of detection and interception long before they can reach their targets. The timing of the transfer is no coincidence. It came at a moment when tensions between Israel and Iran were already at boiling point. Russia, seeking to increase pressure on the West and strengthen its alliance with Iran, chose to provide Tehran with the ultimate defensive shield. Western intelligence agencies were caught off guard. Despite extensive surveillance assets focused on both Russia and Iran, the compartmentalized nature of the operation, combined with deliberate Russian deception tactics, allowed the transfer to reach advanced stages before it was fully detected. This is not just another arms deal. This is a strategic game changer that fundamentally alters the military equation in the Middle East. Israel has suddenly lost its most important advantage, unchallenged air superiority. The United States now faces the reality that its closest ally in the region is significantly more vulnerable than it was just months ago. In the next section, we will examine in technical detail why the S-500 is so revolutionary and how it has left Israel virtually defenseless in the skies. Now, let us examine the weapon that has triggered this strategic earthquake: Russia's S-500 Prometheus air defense system. The S-500 is not simply an upgraded S-400. It represents an entirely new generation of air and missile defense technology, one that fundamentally changes the rules of aerial warfare in the Middle East. According to Russian military specifications and independent technical analyses, The S-500 Prometheus is designed to engage a wide spectrum of aerial threats at extreme ranges and altitudes. It can simultaneously track and destroy up to 10 hypersonic and ballistic targets at distances exceeding 500 kilometers and at altitudes of up to 200 kilometers. This capability puts it in a class of its own. The system consists of several revolutionary components. First, its multi-band radar complex operates across VHF, L-band, and S-band frequencies. This combination makes it exceptionally difficult for stealth aircraft like the American F-35 or F-22 to remain undetected. While stealth technology is highly effective against traditional X-band fire control radars, it is far less effective against the lower frequency radars used by the S-500. Second, the 40N-6E missile is the heart of the system. This long-range interceptor can reach speeds of Mach 7 and is equipped with an active phased array seeker that allows it to engage targets autonomously in the terminal phase. It is specifically designed to intercept hypersonic glide vehicles and ballistic missiles during both the mid-course and terminal phases of flight. Third, the S-500 employs a highly advanced command and control architecture that integrates data from multiple sensors in real time. This allows the system to rapidly discriminate between real threats and decoys, a critical capability when facing sophisticated saturation attacks. What makes the S-500 particularly devastating for Israel is its ability to create a protective umbrella over vast areas of Iranian territory. Once fully deployed, even a small number of S-500 batteries can significantly complicate any Israeli air operation. Israeli F-35s, which have been the backbone of Israel's deep strike capability, now face a credible threat of detection and engagement hundreds of kilometers away from their targets. The system's anti-stealth performance is especially concerning for Tel Aviv. The F-35's low observable design was optimized primarily against higher frequency radars. The S-500's use of lower frequency bands dramatically reduces the effectiveness of that stealth. Israeli pilots can no longer assume they will remain invisible when penetrating Iranian airspace. Furthermore, the S-500 is highly mobile. Its launchers and radars are mounted on heavy-wheeled vehicles, allowing rapid deployment and relocation. This mobility makes preemptive strikes against the system extremely difficult, even for precision-guided munitions. The integration of the S-500 into Iran's existing air defense network creates a layered, multi-tiered system that is far more resilient than anything Iran possessed before. Lower-tier systems, such as the S-300 and Bavar 373, can handle shorter-range threats, while the S-500 provides long-range, high-altitude coverage against stealth aircraft and ballistic missiles. This combination effectively raises the cost and risk of any Israeli or American airstrike on Iranian targets to unacceptable levels. What was once considered a relatively low-risk mowing the lawn operation against Iranian facilities now carries the real possibility of losing high-value stealth aircraft. From a technical standpoint, the S-500 also possesses limited anti-satellite capability. Its extreme altitude reach allows it to threaten low Earth orbit satellites, potentially blinding Western intelligence assets during a conflict. Russia's decision to transfer this system to Iran represents a major escalation in military cooperation between the two nations. It is not merely defensive. By giving Iran the S-500, Russia is creating a strategic shield that protects Iranian nuclear sites, missile production facilities, and command centers from external attack. This dramatically increases Iran's freedom of action in the region. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. For decades, Israel has operated under the assumption that its air force could strike anywhere in the Middle East with relative impunity. The arrival of the S-500 has destroyed that assumption. Israeli military planners must now operate under the constant shadow of a system specifically designed to counter their most advanced aircraft. In purely military terms, the S-500 does not make Iran invincible. No air defense system is perfect. However, it raises the threshold of any potential Israeli or American military action so high that such operations may become politically and militarily unfeasible in the near term. This is why the secret transfer of the S-500 is being treated as one of the most significant developments in the Middle East in recent decades. It is not just another weapons system. It is a strategic equalizer that has suddenly and dramatically altered the regional balance of power. In the next section, we will examine how the United States reacted to this development and why American aircraft carriers were forced to flee the region. As confirmation of the S-500 transfer reached Washington, the United States entered a state of controlled panic. Within hours of the intelligence assessment being finalized, emergency meetings were convened at the Pentagon, the White House Situation Room, and U.S. Central Command headquarters in Tampa. The mood was tense. Senior officials understood immediately that this was not just another incremental arms deal, it was a strategic game changer that directly threatened America's military posture in the Middle East. The first visible reaction was the rapid repositioning of American naval assets. Both the USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier strike groups operating in the eastern Mediterranean and northern Arabian Sea, respectively, received urgent orders to move farther away from Iranian airspace and the Israeli coast. What was intended as a demonstration of American power quickly became a strategic withdrawal. Images of U.S. carriers steaming westward sent a clear and embarrassing message to the world. Even America's most powerful naval symbols were forced to retreat in the face of Russia's latest technology, now in Iranian hands. Why did the United States choose flight over confrontation? The reasons were coldly pragmatic and deeply concerning. First, the S-500 poses a direct and credible threat to American and Israeli stealth aircraft. The system's multi-band radar complex significantly reduces the effectiveness of the F-35's low observable technology. Pentagon planners calculated that sending American or Israeli fighters into Iranian airspace under S-500 coverage would result in unacceptably high risk of aircraft losses. No American commander wanted to be responsible for the first combat loss of an F-35 to an Iranian-operated Russian system. Second, the S-500 dramatically complicates any large-scale air campaign against Iran. It creates a protective bubble over critical Iranian assets, nuclear facilities, missile production sites, and command centers, making precision strikes far more dangerous and costly. Any attempt to suppress the S-500 would require a massive sustained air operation involving hundreds of sorties, electronic warfare aircraft, and standoff weapons. The potential for escalation into a full-scale regional war was judged too high. Third, the economic and logistical reality weighed heavily. Engaging a fully operational S-500 network would consume enormous numbers of expensive standoff munitions and expose American pilots and assets to serious danger. With the U.S. already stretched thin, supporting Ukraine and maintaining deterrence against China in the Pacific, opening a new major front in the Middle East, was strategically undesirable. The political dimension in Washington added another layer of paralysis. The current administration faces intense domestic pressure to avoid new Middle East entanglements. Images of American carriers retreating would be politically damaging, but starting another costly war would be far worse. The decision was made: reposition the carriers, increase intelligence gathering, issue strong diplomatic statements, and quietly accept the new reality on the ground. This retreat sent shockwaves through the region. For Gulf allies who have long relied on American naval presence for security, the sight of U.S. carriers pulling back was deeply unsettling. Saudi Arabia and the UAE began urgent internal reviews of their defense posture. Quiet diplomatic channels with Tehran, already active, gain new momentum as these states seek their own insurance policies in a rapidly changing security environment. For Israel, the situation is even more dire. The Israeli Air Force has built its entire operational doctrine around the ability to conduct deep unilateral strikes into Iran whenever necessary. The deployment of the S-500 has suddenly made that doctrine extremely risky. Israeli leaders now face a painful strategic dilemma: accept a significant reduction in their freedom of action or risk launching high-casualty operations against a much better defended Iran. The transfer also exposes the limits of American intelligence and diplomatic pressure. Despite years of sanctions, surveillance, and warnings, Russia successfully delivered one of its most advanced systems to Iran. This failure represents a major blow to U.S. credibility in preventing strategic technology proliferation. On a broader geopolitical level, the S-500 deal strengthens the emerging Russia-Iran axis. It demonstrates that Moscow is willing to provide Tehran with high-end defensive capabilities in exchange for Iranian support in Ukraine and other theaters. This partnership is no longer purely transactional. It is becoming a genuine strategic alignment against Western dominance. China is watching these developments closely. Beijing sees the S-500 transfer as validation of its own strategy of developing advanced air defense systems to counter American air power. The fact that Russia could deliver such a system under Western sanctions sends a powerful signal to countries considering defiance of U.S. pressure. The most dangerous aspect of this new reality is the increased risk of miscalculation. Israel, feeling more vulnerable, may be tempted to act preemptively before the S-500 network becomes fully mature. Iran, feeling more secure behind its new shield, may become bolder in supporting regional proxies. The United States finds itself caught between the need to reassure Israel and the desire to avoid direct confrontation with a Russia-Iran alliance. In the end, America's panicked repositioning of its carriers achieved little of strategic value. It could not prevent the S-500 from becoming operational. It could not restore Israel's previous freedom of action in the skies, and it could not hide the uncomfortable truth that U.S. power projection in the Middle East now faces serious new constraints. The carriers fled, the S-500 remained, and the old assumptions about American and Israeli air dominance were permanently altered. In the next section, we will examine the deeper factor behind this development: the growing strategic partnership between Russia and Iran, driven by shared will and mutual interests against Western pressure. Beyond radars and missiles, the real story behind Russia's secret delivery of the S-500 to Iran is not technology, it is will. For years, both Russia and Iran have faced intense Western pressure designed to isolate and weaken them. Russia has endured sweeping sanctions since the start of the Ukraine conflict. Iran has lived under maximum pressure for decades. Instead of breaking, both nations chose defiance and deeper cooperation. The S-500 transfer is the clearest manifestation yet of this shared strategic will. Russia's decision to provide Iran with one of its most advanced air defense systems was not made lightly. It represents a deliberate escalation in the Russia-Iran partnership. Moscow understands that arming Iran with the S-500 directly challenges American and Israeli military superiority in the region. By doing so, Russia is sending a powerful message. It will not allow the West to maintain unchallenged dominance anywhere, and it is willing to share its most sensitive military technology with its partners. For Iran, receiving the S-500 is more than acquiring a new weapon system. It is validation of its long-term strategy of resistance and self-reliance. For 45 years, Iran has absorbed sanctions, assassinations, and military threats while steadily building its defensive and offensive capabilities. The arrival of the S-500 represents the culmination of that patience. It gives Iran a credible shield that allows it to operate with greater confidence, knowing that its most vital assets are now significantly harder to strike from the air. This partnership is rooted in a common worldview. Both nations see the United States and its allies as existential threats to their sovereignty and regional influence. Russia and Iran have moved beyond simple transactional deals. They now share intelligence, coordinate diplomatic positions, and support each other militarily. The S-500 is the physical embodiment of this deepening alliance. Contrast this with the strategic mindset on the other side. Israel has long relied on what can be called borrowed superiority. Its qualitative military edge has been underwritten by American technology, funding, intelligence, and political backing. The Israeli Air Force's ability to strike anywhere in the region depended heavily on the assumption that no adversary could effectively challenge its aircraft in the skies. The deployment of the S-500 has shattered that assumption. Suddenly, Israel finds itself facing a defensive system specifically designed to counter its most advanced assets. This creates a dangerous psychological shift inside Israel. For decades, Israelis have been told that their technological superiority, backed by American power, made them essentially untouchable from the air. The S-500 forces a painful reckoning. That edge is no longer absolute. The Israeli public and military establishment are now confronting a new reality in which deep strikes into Iran carry much higher risks and potential costs. The United States faces its own crisis of will. Washington has spent trillions projecting power globally and promised ironclad support to its allies. Yet when Russia delivered the S-500 to Iran, America's response was limited to repositioning carriers and issuing statements. This pragmatic retreat reveals the growing gap between American rhetoric and its actual willingness to accept high costs in defense of distant partners. The difference in strategic culture is striking. Russia and Iran have demonstrated a willingness to endure pain, absorb sanctions, and play the long game in pursuit of their strategic objectives. They invest consistently in capabilities that directly counter Western strengths. In contrast, the U.S.-Israel axis has relied heavily on technological superiority and short-term military advantages often assuming that money and advanced platforms could substitute for sustained national will. History shows repeatedly that nations with stronger internal cohesion and clearer long-term vision often prevail over materially superior opponents who depend primarily on external alliances and technology. The Russia-Iran partnership, strengthened by the S-500 transfer, stands as a powerful example of this dynamic. For Iran, the S-500 is not merely a defensive tool, it is a symbol of national resilience. It proves that even under maximum pressure, a determined nation can acquire game-changing capabilities through patience and strategic partnerships. For Russia, providing the system reinforces its role as a major power willing to challenge the Western-dominated order. This convergence of wills between Moscow and Tehran creates a formidable axis that the United States and Israel must now seriously contend with. It forces both Washington and Tel Aviv to confront uncomfortable questions about the sustainability of their current strategies in the region. The secret transfer of the S-500 is therefore much more than a military transaction. It is a declaration of strategic intent. Russia and Iran have signaled that they will not be contained, will not be isolated, and will continue building the capabilities necessary to defend their interests and project influence. As the S-500 radars begin scanning the skies over Iran, the world is witnessing the tangible result of sustained national will overcoming decades of external pressure. Technology alone did not create this new reality. Resolve did. In the final section, we will pull back to examine how this single development is accelerating the transformation of the global order and why the old assumptions about Western dominance are collapsing. The secret transfer of the S-500 Prometheus from Russia to Iran is not merely a regional arms deal. It is a historic strategic inflection point that is reshaping the global balance of power. When Russia decided to provide Iran with one of its most advanced air defense systems, it crossed a threshold that fundamentally alters the military equation in the Middle East and sends powerful signals across the world. This single move has accelerated the shift from a unipolar American-dominated order toward a more contested multipolar reality. For the United States, the implications are deeply unsettling. For decades, Washington has relied on its technological superiority and naval power to maintain dominance in the Middle East. The deployment of the S-500 has directly challenged that dominance. By making Iranian airspace significantly harder to penetrate, Russia has raised the cost and risk of any American or Israeli military action against Iran to levels that may soon become politically and militarily unsustainable. The retreat of U.S. aircraft carriers was not just a tactical repositioning, it was a visible symbol of eroding American credibility. Allies across the Gulf, who have long depended on American security guarantees, are now quietly reassessing their reliance on Washington. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and other Gulf states recognize that if the United States cannot effectively counter the S-500 threat, their own vulnerability has increased. This realization is already driving accelerated diplomacy between Gulf capitals and Tehran. China is studying this development with clinical precision. Beijing views the S-500 transfer as validation of its own long-term strategy, developing advanced defensive systems to neutralize American air and naval power. The fact that Russia could successfully deliver such a sophisticated system under Western sanctions sends a clear message to countries considering defiance of U.S. pressure. Chinese military planners are drawing direct lessons for the defense of Taiwan and the protection of assets in the South China Sea. Russia has achieved multiple strategic objectives with this single transfer, It has strengthened its alliance with Iran, increased pressure on Israel and the United States, and demonstrated that it remains a major global arms supplier willing to challenge Western red lines. By sharing the S-500, Moscow has also gained greater leverage in its relationship with Tehran, particularly regarding Iranian support for Russian operations in Ukraine. For Israel, the situation is existential. The Israeli Air Force has built its entire national security doctrine around the ability to conduct unilateral deep strikes into hostile territory. The S-500 has suddenly made that doctrine extremely risky. Israel now faces a future in which its most advanced aircraft, the F-35, can be detected and engaged at long range. This loss of air superiority forces Israeli strategists to reconsider everything from preemptive strike options to the credibility of its nuclear deterrent. The broader non-proliferation and arms control regime has also suffered a major blow. The West spent years trying to prevent the spread of advanced Russian weaponry to Iran. The successful secret transfer of the S-500 proves that determined states working together can bypass sanctions and intelligence efforts. This precedent will not be lost on other nations seeking advanced defensive capabilities. We are now entering a dangerous transition period in international relations. The post-Cold War order, in which the United States and its allies could largely dictate terms in critical regions, is fading. A new, more fragmented, and more competitive multipolar world is emerging. In such periods, miscalculation becomes more likely precisely because the old rules no longer apply and the new rules are still being written. The S-500 transfer highlights a fundamental shift in the nature of power. Technology alone is no longer sufficient. Nations that combine advanced capabilities with strong internal will, strategic patience, and reliable alliances are gaining ground. Russia and Iran have demonstrated this model effectively. The United States and Israel, despite their technological advantages, are discovering the limits of power based primarily on superior platforms and external guarantees. This development also affects the global energy market and economic stability. Any future conflict involving Iran under the protection of the S-500 would carry enormous risks of disruption to oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Markets are already beginning to price in higher geopolitical risk premiums. The psychological impact may ultimately prove as important as the military one. Israel's sense of security has been shaken. America's image as the ultimate security guarantor has been damaged. Meanwhile, Russia and Iran project growing confidence and coordination. Looking ahead, this 500 inches Iranian hands will likely encourage further military cooperation between Moscow and Tehran. We may see additional advanced systems transferred, joint exercises, and deeper intelligence sharing. This evolving axis will force the United States to make difficult choices about resource allocation across multiple theaters. The secret delivery of the S-500 is therefore much more than a weapons transfer. It is a declaration that the old unipolar moment has passed. It is proof that determined nations working together can challenge and erode Western military dominance. It marks the beginning of a new era in which air superiority is no longer guaranteed to any single side, and strategic patience combined with technological adaptation can reshape regional and global power balances. The world that emerges from this moment will be more dangerous, more competitive, and more fragmented, but also more honest about the true distribution of power. Nations that understand this new reality and adapt accordingly will help shape the coming decade. Those that cling to the illusions of the old order risk catastrophic miscalculation. The S-500 radars are now scanning the skies over Iran. The old assumptions about unchallenged Western air dominance have been permanently altered. The age of multipolar military competition has arrived. The secret transfer of Russia's S-500 to Iran has changed the Middle East forever. In one decisive move, Moscow has given Tehran a powerful shield that severely restricts Israel's air superiority and forces American aircraft carriers to flee the region. What was once considered Israel's unchallenged dominance in the skies is now under serious threat. The old era of impunity for Israeli and American airstrikes has ended. We have examined how this covert operation succeeded, the revolutionary capabilities of the S-500 that make it so dangerous, America's panicked retreat, and the unbreakable will behind the growing Russia-Iran alliance. This is not just another arms deal. It is a strategic earthquake that has redrawn the balance of power across the region and beyond. As we stand at this dangerous crossroads, critical questions demand answers. Will Israel risk high-casualty strikes against a heavily defended Iran? Can the United States restore its credibility after its carriers were forced to flee? Or will Washington be compelled to accept a new reality where its security guarantees have visible limits? The coming months will determine whether this transfer leads to dangerous escalation or forces a painful strategic recalibration. If this analysis gave you clear, unfiltered insight into one of the most significant military developments of our time, I ask you to take action right now. Hit the like button if this video helped you understand the gravity of the situation. Share it with friends and colleagues who need to see what is really happening behind the headlines. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss critical updates when the balance of power shifts this dramatically. Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Israel will launch preemptive strikes despite the S-500? Can America still guarantee Israel's security in the new reality? And is the world prepared for this accelerating multipolar era? Thank you for watching until the end. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning the official narrative. Until the next update, this is Douglas Macgregor signing off.